Let me tell you a story about the time a bunch of pirates, free men of color, Cajuns, and slaves defeated the most powerful army in the world. Jean Lafitte is a name floated around Louisiana often, but not much is mentioned about his Baratarians. I am a direct descendant of one of these Baratarians, a man who served in Lafitte's right hand and goes by the name of Nez Coupé, or No Nose, on account of losing his nose in battle. His real name was Louis Chicazola, and along with only a handful of other ragtag pirates, he would help change the course of history in a dramatic fashion. In August 1814, Britain and the United States began diplomatic negotiations to end the War of 1812. However, the British Secretary of War wrote to General Pakenham, commanding him to continue on the war, even if he heard rumors of a peace treaty being signed, which, spoiler alert, there was. 60 British ships had anchored in the Gulf of Mexico to the east of Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Borgne by December, with 14,450 soldiers and sailors under the command of Admiral Sir Alexander Cochrane. An American flotilla of 5 gunboats prevented their access to the lakes, and on December 14th, around 1,200 British sailors set out to attack the American force. This was known as the Battle of Lake Borgne, with the British coming out ahead. Thousands of British soldiers under the command of General John Keane then rode to possibly Pearl Island, where they established a garrison. This was all about 30 miles east of New Orleans. On the morning of December 23rd, Keane and a vanguard of 1,800 British soldiers reached the east bank of the Mississippi River, 9 miles south of New Orleans. Keane decided to camp at Lacoste Plantation, home of Gabriel Villaire, and wait for the arrival of reinforcements. Villaire escaped through a window in the back and ran to warn General Jackson of the approaching army and the position of their encampment. In total, the British force would number 8,000 soldiers marching towards the Crescent City. The stage was set for the most important fight in the War of 1812, the Battle of New Orleans. Pakenham wanted to use Chef Mentor Road as the invasion route, but he was overruled by Admiral Cochrane, who insisted that his boats were providing everything needed. Admiral Cochrane believed that the British veteran troops would easily destroy Jackson and Lafitte's ramshackle army, and he alleged that if the army did not do it, his sailors would, and the meeting settled the method and place of the attack. When the British reconnaissance force withdrew, the Americans immediately began constructing earthworks to protect the artillery batteries. These defenses were christened Line Jackson, and Andrew Jackson also sent a detachment to the west bank of the river to man artilleries on the grounded warship USS Louisiana. Even so, the British greatly outnumbered the Americans, and Jackson's total of 4,732 men was again made up of ragtags, from the Navy to the Marines, the Army, Kentucky Militia, Tennessee Militia, Mississippi Militia, even warships. But perhaps the most important were the 52 Choctaw Warriors and 1,060 Louisiana Militia, led by gentleman pirate Jean Lafitte, including Cajuns, Creoles, free people of color, and pirates. And the sizable Louisiana militia would prove to be the hardest fighters and suppliers. They supplied the city of New Orleans with valuable ammunition and guns. If it had not been for the intervention of Jean Lafitte into the battle, the city of New Orleans would have fallen to the British, the peace treaty would have been torn up, and history would have changed. The British battle plan was a two-pronged assault. One group, led by General Lambert, would go to the west bank and secure guns to be turned onto the American lines to support the British. But that got to a rocky start. The British tried to dig a canal to the river, but the dam failed, causing British boats to get stuck in the mud, and it delayed the west bank assault for 12 hours. However, the main attack force would continue on without them. The British marched against General Jackson and Lafitte's lines of defenses on Sunday, January 8th, 1815 at 5 o'clock in the morning. The Americans had constructed 3 lines of defenses. The forward one 4 miles in front of the city, and it was strongly entrenched at the Rodriguez Canal, which stretched from the swamp to the river. The preceding encounter will mark the very last time American and British military forces faced off against each other in the battlefield, and the beginning of a very close relationship that's still seen to this day. The main attack began in darkness and a heavy fog, but the fog lifted as the British neared the main American line, exposing them to withering artillery fire. The British commander had forgotten the ladders needed to cross the 8-foot deep and 15-foot wide Rodriguez Canal dug by the Americans, and the British forces fell into confusion. Most of the senior officers were killed or wounded. Within a few minutes, the American 7th Infantry arrived and fired upon the British near the canal. Within half an hour, nearly all of them were dead. In the main attack on the right, the British infantrymen flung themselves to the ground. huddled in the canal, or they were just mowed down by a combination of musket fire and grape shot from the Baratarians. A handful made it to the top of the parapet on the right, but they were killed or captured. The rest of the British Army had advanced in open skirmish order ahead of the main assault, and they were concealed in the ditch, unable to advance further without any support. The two large main assaults were repulsed. Pakenham and Samuel Gibbs, his second-in-command, were fatally wounded while on horseback by shots fired from the earthworks. British Major Wilkinson reformed his lines and made a third assault. The British soldiers stood out in the open and were shot apart with grape shot. The reserve was used to cover the retreat of what was left of the British Army in the field. General Lambert issued orders to withdraw after the defeat of their main army on the east bank and retreated, taking a few American prisoners and cannon with them. The Americans were so dismayed by the loss of this battery, which would be capable of inflicting much more damage on the American lines on the west bank when the attack was renewed, that they were preparing to just abandon the town when they received news that the British were ultimately defeated and were withdrawing. The Battle of New Orleans was remarkable, not only for the brevity, but also its lopsided casualties. Now, a lot of these numbers are in dispute, but the most common ones I've found is that the British lost 285 killed, 1,265 wounded, and 484 prisoners in 25 minutes. A total loss of 2,084 men, but the Americans only lost 13 killed, 30 wounded, and 19 missing. Honors were awarded to Andrew Jackson, and history would remember him as the sole reason why this battle was won. But you know we can't let that happen. Lafitte was also given a pardon, but the bravery and the marksmanship of the Baratarians has gained them a notation in history sought by many as victorious warriors of the Gulf. Many Louisiana natives can still trace their lineage back to this battle and the heroes that fought in it. Learn more about the Baratarians and watch as we bring them to life in a horror series coming soon at Louisiana Dread.